welcome to another episode of Amputee Outdoors. I'm your host, Glenn. Today, we're going to try and get to Ollalie Lake, where, if everything goes well, I plan to camp for the night, which is why I've got such a huge backpack. In the wintertime, you want to definitely take along some more heavy-duty gear, bigger sleeping bag, and other equipment, so you end up with a pack that's a lot heavier. So we're going to be going off the Pratt Lake Trail and taking the turn off to Ollalie Lake. Hopefully I won't get lost because the trail is covered in snow. I do have my snowshoes with me and I've got my crampons on my boots, and I think I'm about as ready as I can be, so let's get going. Ollalie Lake is located on the western slopes of the Cascade Mountains in Washington State. The Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest extends for 140 miles along the western slopes of the Cascade Mountain Range. You may never have heard of the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, but it is in fact the most visited national forest park in the United States of America. This little bridge was covered in ice, but with my crampons, good balance, and confidence in my abilities, I was able to get across. I finally made it to Ollalie Lake, and the view was spectacular. Nothing more beautiful than an alpine lake covered in a blanket of snow. I didn't want a campsite too close to the lake. The breeze and the wind coming off the lake would be freezing cold in the nighttime, so I set back a little bit further into the woods and found a couple of good trees. The trail to the lake is fairly well packed down by people hiking, but off the trail, the snow's a little bit deeper, so I needed to put on my snowshoes so I wouldn't post hole. To set up the tarp, the first thing I need is my ridge line. That's my bag of bungee cords, don't need that just yet. And here's my ridge line, nice and bright so I can find it in the dark. To set up my ridge line, I first anchor it around one tree. Loop it around the tree at the other end and put it through the prusik knot that I have pre-set up on my ridge line. And then what I do, I pull it all the way through, and what I'm going to do is tie a slippery half-inch after pulling it nice and taut. Now you'll notice that I put the slippery half-inch on the prusik loop side. That way the knot will jam against the loop and not come undone. With my ridgeline set up, I can now get out my Rainfly. First I attach the clip in the middle of the Rainfly to the ridgeline, and then, using the loops that I've attached to the Rainfly, I use a marlin spike, in this case just a couple of twigs that I found on the ground, and attach them to the prusik knots I have pre-set up on my ridgeline. With the ridgeline all set up, it's now time to stake out my Rainfly. Now you'll notice I'm using bungee cords to stake the Rainfly down. I prefer to use bungee cords because, especially in conditions like this, the bungee cords will absorb the impact of snow and clumps of snow falling off the trees, and they'll bounce rather than pull at the stakes. The stakes that I'm using are just simple titanium 8-inch long stakes, and you'll notice that I'm pounding the ground down there with my snowshoe. This will harden the ground and make it easier for the stake to be able to adhere into the ground. And you'll also notice that once I've got it in, it slips out a little bit at first. That's because the angle isn't steep enough. In snow conditions like this, you need to have the spike or the stake in at a much sharper angle. Once it's in there, after a little while, it'll actually freeze in place and should be pretty stable. With the Rainfly Setup, I can get my gear under the Rainfly and think about lunchtime. To cook up my lunch, I'm using my S-Bit 5-piece cook kit that my son got for me. I really like this kit. It's very lightweight, easy to use, and the fuel is very, very affordable. I store the fuel in a metal bottle, and you can't see it in this video, but I've written fuel on the side of the bottle so nobody accidentally grabs it and takes a swig. This little trick you're about to see me perform to prevent myself from burning my knuckles when I try to light the stove, I learned from Boondockery, a fellow YouTuber and camper. I'll put a link to his YouTube video in the comments down below. My bottle of water is wrapped in Reflectix. This will keep it from freezing overnight. Lunch is some top ramen chicken flavored noodles and some chicken in a full package. 4-star camper meal. While I was waiting for the water to come to a boil, I treated myself to a couple of Mounds bars. Love those things. Chocolate, coconut, what's not to like? For my hammock setup this time, I'm using Dyneema cord attached to a couple of straps to go around the trees. Normally I use all straps, but this time I wanted to experiment with Dyneema cord. This is one of the few times when I've been able to wrap a strap around a tree twice. Normally I can barely get one strap around a tree. They're so big around here. What I'm doing here is feeding the Dyneema through the descender ring attached to the hammock, and then I'm going to make a trucker's hitch about 2 feet away from that. Then what I will do is feed the working end into that trucker's hitch and then pull it tight so I can get a nice taut line on my hammock. And then I'll finish it off with a slippery half hitch tied again on the loop side on that trucker's hitch. Tying the slippery half hitch on the loop there means that the knot will jam against the loop. If you tie it on the other side, just on the working end of the Dyneema cord, it will just slide along the cord and eventually come loose. And with my hammock set up at the correct height, chair height, I'm ready to set up my sleep system. 35-degree underquilt, reflectix between the underquilt and my hammock to reflect my body heat, 35-degree sleeping bag, an inner sleeping bag which gives me an extra 10 degrees of protection, and of course an extra sock for my biological foot. Pro tip: to help the snow melt faster, pour in a little bit of water. That'll boil up and it'll help the snow melt much quicker. Dinner is one of my favorites: Mountain House beef stew. Once I've stirred up the Mountain House and got it sealed, I put it into my little cozy I've made out of reflectix. This will reflect 98% of the heat back onto the bag, keep it from getting cold, and when I'm holding it, I won't burn my fingers on that hot bag. So I checked the temperature just before I hit the sack, and it was 10 Celsius. Don't know what that is, Fahrenheit. But I think I'm going to be all right. I've got my underquilt, my reflectix, my sleeping bag, my inner sleeping bag, Nalgene bottle filled with hot water. Got my nice warm hat on. I got my jacket down there over my feet. So I think I should be pretty good for the night. So I'm going to get some sleep and probably wake up crack of dawn when the first light comes over the mountains. See you in the morning. Well, it's 7:45. I guess it's time for me to get out of bed. Don't really want to. I'm all nice and comfy and cozy in my hammock and my sleeping bag. And as you can see, there's been some snow overnight and it's built up on my Rainfly. But I'm a little hungry, so I guess it's time to get up and get some breakfast. Breakfast consisted of some hot coffee and some equally hot porridge. Delicious on a cold, wintry morning. I would have liked to spend some time that day exploring around the lake, but I had promised my wife that I'd be home at a reasonable hour, so it was time to pack up. After I've got my backpack all strapped on and buckled up, I walk around the campsite, make sure they didn't leave anything behind. Leave no trace, that's the right policy. And with that, it was time to head home. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to click the like button, subscribe, and as always, my friends, I hope to see you out there on the trail. Take care now.